Okay, welcome everybody to the Women in Life Sciences event. Today we're going to be discussing ESG and floral arts. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. Few quick moments on housekeeping here. To go over the learning objectives, we're going to be talking about what is ESG, what the impact is on life sciences, and really the importance of ESG to your organization. And with us for that, we have Mary Tressel. But before we kick off, I'd like to introduce Charlize Hyatt. She's the Senior Manager of Client Engagement at Armanino, leading the tech industry. So welcome.
Welcome to everyone for joining us today. Hard to believe, but this is the fourth Women in Life Sciences program that Armanino has co-hosted with Goodwin, and we are excited to host these fun and educational programs for all of you and help create a community of women leaders in the life sciences industry. Life sciences is a very important part of our technology practice, and we are very happy and proud to support women in this space. So. Kicking it off now, on the Goodwin side, Maggie Wong is going to say a few words to get us started.
Thanks, Charlize, and welcome everyone. We're very excited to be co-hosting this event with Armanino. As mentioned, this is one of the few that we've done, and really always a very informative topic and fun chance to get to know other women in the industry. So thanks everyone for joining. For those of you who don't know, is a global law firm. Our life sciences practice includes attorneys who work on corporate and securities matters, as well as IP and FDA regulatory licensing and collaborations. We represent life sciences companies ranging from brand new startups to mature public companies. So we're really a full service legal and business advisor to all types of companies in the life sciences industry, as well as investors and investment banks that are involved in the life sciences. So welcome everyone. We're really excited to spend the next couple hours with you here.
And then real quick before we jump in, Katrina, do you want to say a few words about our life sciences practice in particular and where we focus?
Sure, and sorry, I just jumped on a couple of minutes late. So our life sciences practice at Armanino has been around for a few years now as a kind of industry group, cross-functional group, where we have representatives from all service lines, audit, tax, and consulting. We're really helping the companies at all stages, from preclinical stage all the way to commercial stage, both publicly traded and private companies. We've done a few SPAC transactions and IPOs and a lot of other things. So, you know, I'm really excited to be part of this. I think, you know, sorry, I haven't heard Charlize's introduction, but we started this group last year, and we've had a few events that have been very successful. So really excited to be part of that and creating this community of women in life sciences. And hopefully we'll be able to, we've been talking about it, but it's been a little bit hard to organize. Hopefully we'll have some in-person events soon where we'll be able to get together in person.
Awesome, thanks Katrina. And now, Mary, I would like to turn it over to you to get started with your presentation about ESG.
All right, so thank you very much, Charlize, and everyone for being here. My name is Mary Tressel. I've been with Armanino for 12.5 years, and I have led Armanino on its own journey when it comes to ESG, environmental, social, and governance strategy for our firm. And in doing so, helped bring to life here at our firm a practice where we can support our clients addressing your ESG reporting, your program needs, and developing strategy. And so we're going to walk through today why ESG matters to the life sciences industry. And I hope that as I've done these presentations over the last 9 months, there's always a lot of questions. So please feel free to just put them in the chat or come off mute and interrupt me as we go along. But I'm going to give you an overview and why this again matters to your industry, why you should care about it. And then we are going to have some open discussion topics at the end too. So we'll spend a bit of time on that, and then we get to do the fun part, which is arranging the flowers with Elise. So we'll get through the education first, and then go to educating our skills in floral arrangements. So let's go to the next slide. So where did ESG begin? The term ESG, environmental, social, and governance, came out in a United Nations report about 15 years ago. But the real focus is on sustainable development. And that's where you've heard people say that we are kind of borrowing this earth from our children, or they've spoken about that they want the earth to be here and safe and healthy for their children's children. This is that concept of we can develop in our current time and meet the needs of our present generation, but still create an earth that is able to take care of future generations. And for many, many years, this was thought to be the purview of government or of nonprofit organizations that were focused on sustainability. But investors, workers, customers, they're all clamoring for business to take a bigger role and a bigger responsibility for our impact when it comes to sustainable development. And that is why you see the big push for ESG. And it's hard to open your Wall Street Journal on your screen every morning without seeing a news story that relates to ESG. So we'll go to the next slide. So what do the E and the S and the G stand for? When we're talking about the environment, it's really transparency around your environmental impact. And the components of environmental, when you're looking at ESG reporting, go to carbon footprint and how that impacts climate change. We're just speaking as people were coming on about how hot it is in Texas right now, many parts of the US, and then certainly the UK and Europe are suffering with temperatures that they are not used to and prepared for. So when we speak about a company's environmental impact, it is what is the company doing about energy management, water and waste management, and just even travel, business travel. That's all incorporated under the environmental umbrella. Social really has to do with quality, diversity, supply chain management, ensuring that human rights are protected in your supply chain, focusing on diversity and inclusion because investors realize that companies that have diverse leadership, which is why this Women in Life Sciences group is so important, they perform better. They can respond to market trends and changes in the marketplace much more quickly. They do overall perform better than companies that do not have diverse leadership. So I'm sure you're aware, but NASDAQ last year created a new diversity rule for all of its listed companies. And so that every company on NASDAQ must have 2 diverse members, board members, 1 female, and then 1 member that is self-described as from an underrepresented population. And if the company that is listed on NASDAQ cannot meet that requirement, they have to provide a written explanation as to why. And it goes straight on their public listing. So that's how important NASDAQ believes it is to have diversity, equity, inclusion in the businesses that they list. So, and then the last bullet there is impact on communities. So many companies do have foundations or community service, corporate philanthropy. That is used to be the corporate social responsibility kind of focused on that and how much money could a company give back. Now it's part of this comprehensive social approach that businesses are being required to report on. The last section, governance, is something that comes pretty naturally to this audience. We've got a lot of accountants and we've got a lot of corporate counsel on this call, and governance is something that you're all very familiar with, particularly when it comes to financial reporting. But when we're speaking on the ESG and the integrated reporting of financials and environmental, social, and governance reporting, we're also looking at board composition, not only the C-level leadership of a company, but the board members, how the company is managing its stakeholder engagement and finding out what's most important to all of its stakeholders. And in cybersecurity, I'm sure all of you are very aware of that because you want to protect your IP. But cybersecurity is a critical component of governance. So that's another area that companies really need to be paying attention to. This is the comprehensive approach here. And all of these slides will be made available to you after the call. So if there's anything that is a takeaway for you, you'll be able to use it after the call. So let's go to the next one, Charlize. So the World Economic Forum has been putting out their top 10 global risks list for many years, but this year's list in particular, it contains 5 environmental risks. So in the top 10, 5 of them, half of them relate to the environment. And I think if we'd seen this list in 2019, infectious diseases, which is listed number 6, may not have even made the top 10. So we know our world has really changed since 2020. And the World Economic Forum is focused on that, and they are providing guidance to business that we are not doing enough fast enough. And so we've got to really zero in on ESG as a way to address that. So if you've heard of ESG reporting before this call, you may have heard of some of these frameworks that are out there and standards. There's the TCFD, which is the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, is very well known. Also, the Principles for Responsible Investment. Here at Armanino, one of our auditors is accredited for the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. So there's this kind of what we call alphabet soup of frameworks and standards out there that relate to ESG reporting. And that's one of the things that actually has been holding business back. There's so many standards, there's so many ways to approach ESG reporting that many companies say, well, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to see what the big guys do. I'm going to see what the Fortune 100 is focused on. I'm going to see what the SEC has to say before I jump in, because this is a confusing landscape. What is a great development, as you see at the bottom of the page, is that at COP26 last year in Glasgow, Scotland, these groups all came together and they said, we need to standardize and simplify the reporting landscape for business. In order to get more adherence and get more participation, we need to simplify this. So they've come together and they've created the International Sustainability Standards Board. So this coalition is coming together and coalescing and creating one framework that will work across government organizations. It will work for corporations and privately owned businesses. It will even be applicable to nonprofits. So the idea is, let's create this set of standards, reporting framework that every organization can use, and we can compare apples to apples, finally have some consistent and reliable disclosure instead of having apples compared to papayas compared to watermelon. You know, it's just really kind of a choose your own adventure reporting in the past. So we're moving towards this standardization. I think it's going to be a much better place for, especially for multinational companies, because standards in Europe are different than in the US. And so having this International Sustainability Standards Board metric that you can use across all the divisions of your multinational will be very helpful, and again, help to streamline the reporting for you and your team. So we can go to the next slide. So the SEC did come out with proposed climate reporting regulations. And so they brought that out to the public in March and closed the reporting period at the end of June. The proposed reporting dates is what you're seeing on the screen here. They are taking in all the feedback that they got from corporations, from accounting firms, from law firms and different, different coalitions. They're taking all that feedback right now and applying it to those reporting requirements. And we expect that they will have the finalized climate reporting regulations available by the end of this year, end of 2022. I think it's really important to note that the SEC is creating these requirements because investors are clamoring for it. You have different rating systems, you have all of those different frameworks we just had on the slide before. Investors want to have that ability to compare company A to company B and see the same metrics disclosed and then make their investment decision on which is doing a better job when it comes to ESG metrics, particularly in this case, environmental metrics. So that is the reason these reporting requirements are coming forward. They will be in place as early as filing in 2024, which means your 2023 data needs to be prepared. You need to be tracking these metrics, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions. And then as early as 2025, pardon me, if you're a large accelerated filer, you will have to have limited assurance on the data that you're providing. So first year reporting will be kind of self-reported, self-monitored, but you'll be quickly moving into needing to provide limited and then reasonable assurance and working with your auditors to do that. So this is a big development. Again, we do expect it to be finalized by the end of this year. So Armanino will be here to help you understand this when it does come through and becomes a requirement for public companies. And if you are a private company looking to go public, this is something you're going to want to be prepared for as well. So I'm just checking in the chat to see. Okay, no questions yet, but again, feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go along. All right, so the next phase of our presentation here, that's kind of the big global landscape as we see it today. Now we're going to bring it down to what does this mean for life sciences companies? So we're going to walk you through why this matters to your organization, even if you are, as I said, pre-public and not quite prepared to do that SEC reporting. There's still really great reasons for you to be focused on ESG. And the first one is, what we build a lot of business cases on, and that is following the money. Where is the money? And those investors that I was talking about that care deeply about these metrics, they are pouring money into companies that have strong ESG funds. And this 39 billion that's been invested in sustainable funds, every day there's a new sustainability ESG fund being announced. People can't put their money there fast enough, really. This has been quite the investment trend that has been happening. The other thing is that banks are providing preferred lending rates to companies that have strong ESG performance, and insurers are now setting up metrics to measure the companies that they are insuring on ESG to, again, provide better rates for them as far as insurance rates go. Sorry, I saw something pop up. What are the anticipated annual cost to track and report for small public companies? The SEC did put in some dollar figures around that in their report. Sorry, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I will follow up and make sure that Charlize and Alexa provide that average reporting cost to the whole group. We'll make sure we send it out afterwards. I don't want to misstate it on this call, so I've learned over the years, if you don't know it, let's make sure I come back to you with the answer. But the SEC has evaluated that. And for companies that self-report right now, so again, a lot of 90% of public companies are self-reporting on ESG and some of them are getting limited assurance. What the SEC said is that their new requirements should not increase that cost substantially. Just don't remember the dollar figure, so I want to be really accurate with you before I provide that number. But so the idea is that the SEC is not trying to create an additional burden but they want to, again, make sure that the companies have, or that investors have that comparable and reliable data to look at and evaluate as they go forward. Okay, we could go to the next slide. So the talent war. So we've been living through this great resignation. We know the strange recession that we are in right now, high employment or low unemployment, high employment. It's very challenging for companies to hire the best and the brightest. Everyone's fighting for the best and the brightest. Doesn't matter what industry you are in. It's a tight talent market. And what do the younger, what's this new generation, Gen Z, millennials, what do they care about? They care about the environment and social issues. Some say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is the top concern that this younger generation have. Others say it's the environment. Either way, if your company does not have a story to tell when it comes to recruiting and retaining your younger talent around ESG, if your employees don't feel like they share the same values as your organization, they probably will be looking to your competitors, so the competitors who are telling a story around ESG. We know here at Armanino, it has really made a difference for us in our recruiting efforts to be a certified B Corp. I've had many younger team members tell me they joined the firm because we are a certified B Corp. So that type of thing can help you stand out, and that talent, bringing your products to market, your IP to market, is really important for the growth of your company. So this is a key reason that you should be looking at ESG. Next is being able to command premium pricing. And many studies have shown that the majority of consumers are willing to pay more for transparent information about the products that they buy. In fact, I had a millennial on our team. We were discussing this point, and he was telling me he was at Target, I think, buying bed sheets, and one set of bed sheets had on the label the carbon footprint of creating that set of bed sheets, and then the rest of them had no information about that. And he said to himself, well, I don't even know if this number is good or bad when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, but the fact that they wanted to put on their product what their carbon footprint was in order to make this product means to me that they're being transparent. I'm going to pay the extra $5 for these sheets, and he did. So it's interesting that I know in life sciences, we're not necessarily buying off the shelf in that manner, but consumers do care very much about their the supply chain and the way that products are made. So again, if you've got a good story to tell there, it will only help you to be able to increase your profitability when it comes to bringing products to market. Okay, the next slide. You can build your brand on your key ESG factors. So maybe you're creating a new drug and you're making sure that it is getting in the hands of those who can't necessarily afford it without insurance. So you're making sure that part of your market strategy is being able to get it into the hands of those who need it. So you can build your brand around that accessibility that you're creating for your product to everyone who is in need of your product that you've developed. So also, again, build your brand around your diversity, equity, inclusion efforts at your firm, or your ability to reduce waste in the production of your product, and maybe get to net zero by 2030, which is a key goal for many companies. All of these things can be built into your branding efforts around your products, and are very much used by many companies in many industries. So this is a way you can stand out in the life sciences industry. But number 4 leads to number 5, which is you've got to avoid backlash from greenwashing. So if you're going to make a claim regarding ESG, you need to be able to back it up. You need to be able to have that audit trail behind the numbers that you're stating. Or if you're saying we're getting to net zero by 2030, that's our goal, and that's all you have to show for it, you don't have a plan, you don't have a strategy for limiting your greenhouse gas emissions, you will be found out in this era of 24/7, minute by minute news and social media. So investors are they're jaded to companies that frequently overstate and exaggerate their ESG progress. So that's something on the kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt scale. You've got to make sure that when you make a claim that you do have the data to back it up and the ability to do that. So on the next slide, we're sharing with you, I'm not going to read the entire slide to you, but I think this is a fun slide about the 7 sins of greenwashing. What does greenwashing mean? And what are some of the worst sins that you can have when it comes to greenwashing? So the sin of no proof is what I was really speaking about, an environmental claim that cannot be substantiated by a third party is really a bad one. The sin of fibbing, number 6, I got this example from a colleague of ours in the More Global Network, who kind of uncovered, when you go to a hotel, you go to the hotel and there's a sticker, there's a little placard in the bathroom that says, "We want to save water. Please, if you're staying with us for more than 1 day and you will reuse your towel, you will help us save water." Well, in actuality, that whole trend in the hospitality industry started because the hotels wanted to save on their labor and their operations costs from the cleaning of the towels. So it was not really an effort to save water as much as it was to save money on paying their cleaning staff and paying the electricity bill around cleaning it. So they were putting up this hey, we are very environmentally focused claim, but that was not actually the business driver behind it. So again, we've got to be careful of not melding two things there when you're making an ESG claim. And then also the sin of vagueness, I think you see all the time when you're at your grocery store, or again, you're out buying household products. Here's an eco cleaner, here's a green cereal, here's a green loaf of bread that you can buy. What does that really mean? If people are just putting eco and green on it, there's not really anything that can substantiate that for the consumer. So these are ways that people try and get that dollar spend from the consumers that want to purchase. There you go, Alexa, all natural. What does that actually mean, all natural? So that's how companies are really trying to obtain that higher margin and higher profit margin on their products. But again, eventually they will get called out for that. In fact, there's a very big story in Europe about the bank HSBC claiming that their investments were in ESG funds, but then when the regulators actually looked into it, the companies that were part of the ESG fund that HSBC was advertising were not actual top performers when it comes to ESG, and so they actually got a huge fine for false advertising. So there can be some retribution for committing one of the sins of greenwashing here. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is again a bit of a heavy read, and so like I said before, we will share these slides with you. I'm not going to read through every point, but what Armanino did was we were bringing our ESG services to the market, is we really wanted to kind of put things in terms where it really got to the business case. And so we looked at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That's one of those frameworks we had up on the screen earlier. And the United Nations has 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The UN really feels like if we as a global society can meet those goals, we will be focused on prosperity for our current generation and for future generations. So they purposely made the goals broad, and I wouldn't say vague, but pretty broad here. So no poverty or affordable and clean energy. That's pretty broad. But when you go on to their site and you look at the global impact that they're trying to achieve, so around affordable and clean energy, they want companies and individuals to commit to 100% renewable energy and increasing energy efficiency. Well, what does that mean for a business? If you say, okay, you know what? That sounds right. That sounds like what we should focus on as a business. But actually what the business bottom line impact and benefit for you is that you'll actually reduce operating costs. You're going to improve air quality and health for your workers and for the communities that you are have your manufacturing facilities in. So there's a big win here. And in fact, McKinsey has done a study that says that companies that focus on ESG and embed it into their strategies actually realize a 60% operational savings. So there's a big reason to focus on this. And then we put the KPIs in the last column, the key performance indicators. So how you would measure if you're meeting the UN goal is what percentage of your energy consumption is renewable. And then again, when I talked about it earlier, the good health and well-being, if we can have life sciences companies that are focused on product gaps that have been identified by global health research organizations, then as your companies are developing products to meet that, then you are definitely going to be supporting the development. And we saw this with COVID. We saw companies come together and develop a vaccine in record time to try and save lives, right? So it was a real life case study of companies meeting that good health and well-being goal from the United Nations. And the last one I would focus on here is under the governance category is partnerships. So again, having your company engage with public sector research institutes and universities, it's good business, but it's also building, again, that next generation of talent for you when you're working with universities on your new products. And you're getting these perspectives that are outside the walls of your company and outside your focus area. You're getting perspectives from multiple inputs, and that helps you to create a better product, again, respond to those market needs faster and those trends. So these are just, again, some things. So every company, what we recommend at Armanino is that every company really evaluate and work with all their stakeholder groups to identify what are the key issues for those stakeholders. And then they sit back and they look at what is most important for their business growth. And where you have that intersection, that Venn diagram, where the stakeholder concerns and the areas where it will support your business growth, where they intersect, those are the key areas of ESG to focus on first. So all of your scorecards may not look like this one. This is a sample that we wanted to put out there as an opportunity for you. Okay, great. And so now this is, I think, a good takeaway for you as you leave today's meeting. You think about this maybe tomorrow or over the next couple of weeks. How do we know that our company is prepared for ESG? As somebody was asking about the cost of reporting and meeting the SEC requirements. Certainly that will be important and a requirement for you. But if you're thinking about all the other reasons for embedding ESG into your business strategy, those 5 key reasons, these are the questions to ask yourself. Are you meeting your board's expectation? Is your board going to come to you one day and ask you what we're doing about environmental or diversity issues, or making sure that we're protecting people throughout our supply chain, all the product components that are coming into our product? So if you don't feel today that you can answer those questions for your board, then this is the time to start asking yourself and your leadership team and your board, what are those key areas? And as I mentioned, what's most important to your business success? So maybe what your investors and your stakeholders care about. Do you understand how that impacts your business success going forward? We talked about attracting and retaining talent. Does your technology strategy right now support your ESG strategy? So many of you have got your ERP systems in place. You may even have CRM systems in place to track how you're doing with customer retention, et cetera. But do you have a strategy in place for pulling the data that you need from all these different sources to be able to report on ESG? So there's a big opportunity for you to streamline this. We've seen from many of our clients, ESG reporting is a huge burden to the internal audit team, to the legal team, to the controller and CFO, their finance teams of pulling together the data. Sometimes they're being asked by a large customer to be able to provide that data, and it's a real tight deadline. We've had we've had a couple of engagements where we've had clients call and say, I need this information in 1 week, I need this information in 2 weeks, and they come to Armanino because they just don't have the in-house resources for it. So again, getting ahead of how are you going to manage that reporting and use technology to support you to automate some of that is really an important thing to be thinking about today. So Mindy,
Mary, Mindy had a great question. She said, where it's advantageous to compare your ESG stats versus others in the industry, would it be okay to disclose those comparisons?
well, so I think yes. I mean, if the others in your industry are putting out that information in a public forum, many people do include ESG reports on their website. So I see no problem with you comparing yourself to their publicly reported data. And again, when the SEC requirements are in place, then you'll have all the data available as a public resource. And the International Sustainability Standards Board, and we've got people kind of reporting on the same frameworks, you're really going to be able to see where you compare in your marketplace. And that's part of that, building your brand. You know, you're the top organization in the pharmaceutical industry for XYZ metric. And I think that's perfectly a great thing to do. So that's how you can build that brand. Okay. Thank you for that question, Mindy. So this is how Armanino takes an approach to support our clients. We really like to start with the assessment phase, where we help a company to analyze where do you stand today and what are your goals for the future. Where do you and when you see that stand-in of where you stand today, we can do a comparison to the industry and let you know where you stand in terms of the marketplace. So we love to come in at the beginning and help companies if you're just getting started on your ESG journey. That leads to building a strategy and implementing programs to say you've identified that you need to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization, or you really need to address waste in your product strategy. We can help you build the programs that can make that happen, help you get some quick wins on the board and have a longer term strategy that expands over a year to 3 years. Those of you, again, that are pre-IPO or that are already public companies will need to prepare for that measurement piece from the SEC and having an audit trail for the data that you are reporting. So we can have our internal audit team help you to prepare for that. And then Armanino doesn't play both sides of that fence, right? So if you've got someone else helping you with setting the controls and the internal audit piece, then we could provide you that limited assurance or reasonable assurance support. And then finally, we really encourage companies to not look at ESG as a one-time activity. It is a continuous improvement loop. That's why this graphic is a circle. You have the ability to optimize your efforts year in and year out. And part of that optimization, as I mentioned, applying technology to your ESG reporting and tracking of data and those internal controls. Another piece of that is looking at tax credits. There's sustainable and green tax credits out there available. And we want to help you again with a bottom line positive impact when it comes to your ESG approach. And then you can start all over again, right? You look at the strategy you put in place last year and you think, well, we could do even better, or hey, we did great here and we want to move forward even faster where we're seeing success. Those are all things that we're here to kind of walk this journey with you as your ESG advisors, and we're here to support you with that. And I think the next slide is just we just wanted to show you that we are a certified B Corp, and we are proud to be in the company. I think if you can go to the next slide, Alexa. Oh, sorry, skip that. Anyways, proud to be in the company of the Patagonias, the Warby Parkers out there that are really focused on balancing their purpose with their profits. And this is Armanino's purpose. The reason we exist, the reason all of us get up every day and do our best to improve that incremental and continuous improvement, because we want to be the most innovative and entrepreneurial firm that makes a positive impact on you, our clients, on our people, and on our communities. So we can go back to the discussion questions now, Alexa. All right. So are we going into breakout rooms or we're staying in this group?
Sorry, I had to unmute. We are going to go into some breakout rooms.
Okay, great.
So Charlize, while I'm setting this up, if you want to kind of take them through the discussion questions and overall plan, that would be great.
Sure thing. So I think we're going to go into 3 different groups of 6. So thank you to Alexa for getting that rolling for all of us. Within the rooms, we're going to talk about what do you see as the most critical ESG topics in the life sciences industry today? Where do you think the industry is doing a good job in relation to ESG? And what is the most ridiculous or infuriating greenwashing example you've seen? So I suspect that some of these may be used the whole time. So don't necessarily have to go through all of these questions. If the group wants to just focus on one, we're going to come back and share with the group following our discussions.
And any further questions for me before we go in the breakouts while Alexa is doing that? You can, again, feel free to come off mute or drop it in the chat.
I had another quick question. I feel like I'm asking all these questions.
No, great.
If you find it too hard to find suppliers that fit your green profile, does that mean that some of these smaller businesses are going to go out of business because the new reporting requirements make it hard to work with companies that can't provide that data?
So what we are seeing is that the bigger companies, the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 are pushing down reporting requirements on their clients. For instance, we had a client that is a supplier to the Heinz Food Corporation. And they were one of the people that came to us and said, we have 2 weeks to get this data. We thought we could skip out and not report on our carbon footprint, but they're requiring it or they will drop us out of their supplier program. So there is going to be this push for it. I don't know that it will put people out of business. I think it will put them in a panic to get the data. But I think that the bigger companies out there, the Amazons, the Targets, all of the big manufacturers, seeing it in the automobile industry too. And I do think it will find its way into the life sciences industry. The bigger players are pushing down on the smaller players. And so the information will be required. That's again where the benefit of having this comparable data and a single set of what does this mean and what exactly do people need. Once we have that really well defined by the SEC or by the International Sustainability Standards Board, it will make it easier on businesses to be able to uncover that data, unlock it for their companies.
All right, great. So I have the breakout rooms already. I think we're going to try to spend about 5 to 7 minutes in these smaller groups chatting, and then we'll come back together and share any fun nuggets that came out of our talk. So bear with me. Hopefully I'm doing this all correctly. So thanks. Success.
Oh.
Hopefully everybody had good conversation. Would anybody like to kick it off for our last few minutes on any fun nuggets that their group was discussing? We all like small groups.
I feel like we cheated a little bit because we had Mary in our group. So I feel like someone else should talk.
I vote for Hannah.
No, I think it was a good discussion, talking about, what should we be thinking about, and, obviously don't stay behind the 8 ball. And I wrote down education, I'm on the accounting team, so somebody's got to start leading the discussions, right? And so educating people in my team, and then, cross-functionally, in my legal team as well, and getting the filter up to the board, like these are the things we need to start thinking about and putting into place.
And I took away from our discussion too, just, when we get asked what applies to me, for a lot of my clients, nothing now, but
right.
Start getting in the habit of asking the questions, gathering the information, putting your suppliers, your vendors, your contract counterparties on notice that you're going to be interested in these things. Mm-hmm. So kind of pushing out the responsibility to others to get you the information that you might need someday.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think Hannah, you had
a
a
really
good,
great.
oh, sorry, you had
Oh, sorry.
you had a good point in that this is not an accounting exercise. So don't let the board and other powers that be push this down on the CFO, the controller, you know, the people that traditionally get tasked with all this stuff. Mary, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it does come often to the CFO and controller. It lands in their desk, on their desk. But the information comes from across your organization. It comes from the operations team. It comes from HR. It comes from your legal team. I forgot to mention this to the whole group, but ESG data is really both quantitative and qualitative. So do you have policies in place? And that's where your legal team and your HR team is going to be helping you out. And then again, the supplier information that Mary Ann was just discussing. Who's managing that supply chain? Is that your operations leader? And how do you get that information out of them? So it is a complex approach to integrated reporting. It's not just that financial bottom line data that we're so used to in the accounting side reporting on. So my colleague Chris Russell likes to say ESG really breaks down the silos in an organization because you need information from everyone. And so if suddenly everyone is really focused on these core issues that are important to your customers and your investors, you start to see some synergies and some improvements right away just by breaking down those silos.
Hey, Mary, I'm going to chime in. Our group touched briefly on the fact that, smaller companies have employees who are all working remotely now. So obviously, not spending money on fuel and is that something that you guys are addressing when you're kind of creating assessments and stuff? Is that a huge trend where 50% of any particular company is now home-based versus in an office? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it is obviously a trend and true for many. And the B Corp organization just sent out an article about what is that environmental impact that I am sitting in a spare bedroom at my house working. So how do you measure that too and the impact of that? So you decrease your commuting impact, but there is an environmental impact from all of us having our laptops charged up at home. And that should not be ignored. So we are actually investigating that for ourselves, for Armanino. What does that mean? So when I have an answer, I'll be sure to share it.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other thoughts or discussion points that you guys would like to have? I mean, we're right about at the hour, so this was the point in which we are going to roll up our sleeves and play with flowers. Sorry, I know it's more complicated than that, Elise, but I'm really excited to play with flowers.